So I started to grieve. And I grieved for maybe a few years. And it took a lot of therapy too, to come to a healthy place and not to succumb to hatred and not to succumb to bitterness and but also learn to feel, because all these years I didn't learn how to feel. I only knew how to just do because things needed to be done.
I know why you didn't learn how to feel. You had to shut all of that down. You had to shut it all off to be able to survive. And then all of a sudden your therapist is like, I want you to feel. And that's like this revolutionary thing for you, because all this time you're just serving as that shield for your family and all the different roles that you had to go through. That must have been really, really difficult.
And I was like, okay, this is it. This is the key. Now you got to dive in full on. Because if you want this to work, 15-year-old me, you got to be all in. And so that's what I did. And throughout, I can tell you that as I grew up in the faith, almost every single prayer I ever prayed was for my family. And I was adamant. I might as well had said, God, you got no choice but to save my whole family. Like, you have no choice because that's what you told me. And that's what your word says. So let's go. Every single one of them. And it did happen. It did. I saw my siblings come to Christ. Sarai wasn't born yet. But she kind of grew up in the church when she was born. I saw my mom and dad come to Christ. And I saw them all develop relationships. And it was beautiful. Of course, every person has their own story and their own journey with Christ. So the way that developed for them and what that journey looks like is very different. Some are there with God and still working on it and doing their best, and others are completely fallen off. And some just have a complicated relationship. And still, I have hope to some degree because life has hit me hard. And I feel like I just need to just blurt it out because I don't know that there is any other packaged way of saying what I need to say.
Yeah.
Or transitioning into it.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Valley of the Heroic podcast. This is episode 50. And for episode 50, I wanted to do something special, at least something special to me that I think will also translate into something special for you with my podcast guest today. Today's podcast guest is my wonderful wife, Johanna Carolina Muñoz, who is not only a wonderful person, not only a wonderful wife, not only a wonderful mother, but she is also a social worker, a lover of justice, a lover of right doing, a lover of family, somebody who constantly dedicates herself to the betterment of her family, an artist, a creative, a singer, a homemaker, an excellent cook, and overall, probably the best person you'd ever meet if you ever met her. So, with that being said, Joe, welcome to the podcast. We obviously they've heard of you before if they've watched episodes of the Good, Brave, and Heroic podcast. But I wanted to jump right in with you, babe. And my question to start off is, one of the things that I think is really dope about you is that you have a tattoo on your shoulder that says warrior. What does that tattoo mean to you?
Okay, wait a minute. I still need to recover from that epic introduction. I felt like every time you said something, it was like, oh. And I could never get back up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And as you were saying, I was like, I'm those things. That's what I am.
I'm those things?
I do that. Yeah, I do that. I do that. Like that. Yeah. Okay. So, my tattoo. I have a tattoo up here, right?
Yeah.
On this side. that says, right, because I have tattoos on my right side, but on my left. Not on purpose, but yeah. That says warrior. How did we get there? The life I've lived.
End podcast. The life I've lived.
So, in my journey with God, in my prayer time, in getting to know God and God helping me understand who I am, I felt God giving me this identity of myself, ultimately as a warrior, not warrior. And of course, there are stories and stories and stories that lead to that. But I think that over the course of my life, I've lived, like many people, have lived some things that could make a person feel like maybe bitter, maybe want to give up, maybe not be here any longer, and just lead a life down a dark path. And I'm a very introspective person, and I think along the way, life has made me become resilient and has made me become strong. Unfortunately, I didn't have an option, and I just had to grow up, and I had to develop these skills out of survival. And so in adulthood, I wrestled a little bit with the idea of my being resilient and strong, because while I prided myself in that before, as I started to is deconstruct the right word? Maybe deconstruct is the right word. I started redefining myself as I talked to God, and I started to feel like I don't really like that I'm resilient. I don't really like that I'm strong. And I know that sounds odd, but it's more because I had to be resilient and I had to be strong. I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that, because that meant that I had no choice, and it meant that I was forced to be these things, and it meant that I didn't have any control in that. I didn't have a say in that. And so in going through the things that I have that I'm sure we will dive into, as I'm redefining, and I'm like, I know that these are good qualities. I know they are. But God, I need help redefining these things because I don't like that I had to be them. And God helped me redefine and see myself still as these things, but give them new definition.
Yeah.
With Him included in it, and gave me new perspective. And with that, He was able to give me this perspective of myself, to identifying myself as a warrior. And that's how I got there. I think at the time, I got that tattoo in Cali. When we visited Cali in 2017, I think it was 2017, because we got married 2016 in June, and then
17.
Went straight to work. Yeah, 2017. And there was a lot happening during that time. As many people know, Eric was depressed in 2016. And I had just, it was around the same time that I was having a lot of migraines. And so that led me to go to the doctor. And I got a referral to see a neurologist who did some MRIs. And that they found something, not in my brain, but in my throat area. And they recommended that I go to an endocrinologist. So I went to that guy. And he diagnosed me with Hashimoto's.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same sentence, very nonchalantly, bedside manner not the best, was, so I'm asking him all these questions. I'm like, what does that mean? What can I expect? What is the plan? What does the treatment look like? Is there treatment? How will this impact my life, et cetera, et cetera? And he said, well, Hashimoto's is XYZ. And then once he gave me the definition of what it was, essentially, he also said, oh, and there's a high chance that if you were to get pregnant, you'll have miscarriages, or you could just have trouble getting pregnant. And if you do carry a baby to term, they will have defects. And that's all I heard.
Yeah.
At that point, that's all I heard. And I was like, okay. As nonchalantly as he gave me that news, I nonchalantly walked out of that room. It was a heavy thing to just sit with. And I don't remember how I processed it, but I think I got to the point where I was so tired that I was just like, here's something else. Here's another thing.
Yeah.
And after I felt through some of those feelings, my answer was, okay, I just fought fibromyalgia and God healed me from it. Round 2 or round 3,000, if you look at my
round 2
life.
for like the big health scares.
Yeah.
But round 3,000 for life.
For life. And I said, okay, I will worship. I will worship. And this is in the midst of us like going through chaos. Mm-hmm. and how, because when you had the depression, it impacted your life deeply, but it obviously impacted us, our life, because if it impacts your life, it impacts mine. And we were newly married. So it was a lot. It was a lot to sift through, to walk through, to navigate. And I was like, I literally have no other option here but to worship. And so I did, and I prayed and I worshiped, and I was like, okay, God, well, it seems like I don't have an option because I have this. So it seems like there's no other option but to ask for healing, and it will happen. And that was kind of my attitude. And so I did. I fervently prayed for healing. And so all that was happening around that time. We go to Cali for a trip. It was a surprise trip that I had. We were hoping to go to Comic-Con, but that didn't happen. But we still went on the trip.
Still, like, one of the most, well, just heartfelt gifts.
Yeah, it was a surprise.
You were so sad that we didn't get to go to Comic-Con, and I was just like, you tried to get us to Comic-Con. I'm there like, and you're like,
I also felt so bad because we were walking right outside of Comic-Con. And I'm like, wow, we're outside of Comic-Con just watching everybody be jolly, and we're just outside of it. Like, oh, but you were just like a kid in a candy store. I was like, yeah, okay.
We made our own Comic-Con. We went to like different comic stores.
Yeah, we did. We had fun. So going through all of that and then going through a bunch of other things in life, I was like, okay, I think this is the tattoo I'm gonna get, and it was Warrior, and it has an arrow, like it's the arrow, and then Warrior is written within the arrow.
One of the things that stands out to me about what you shared was that you were tired of being strong, and you said that that doesn't make sense probably to some people, but just from hearing you share it the way that you share it, also with the fact that I know most of your life, a lot of your life, it's largely due to the fact that the decision was taken away from you.
Yeah.
You didn't choose to be strong, although I think you would have been strong no matter what, right? Because like you said, the first thing you said was a lot of people would have taken a dark path. A lot of people would have fallen apart. You didn't. You chose a warrior's path, and to see that you took that, brought it to God and said, I don't like this anymore. And he said, okay, I'll redefine it. is a really beautiful thing, and a really just fantastic, beautiful thing to attribute to God's love for you as his daughter. To think that God would do that because he cares. It's absolutely beautiful. So let's dive into your story then.
Okay.
When you think of some of the bigger things that happened to you throughout your life, I don't know if you want to pick and choose, you want to stay in one area, you want to start at childhood and go forward. It's up to you. But when you think of those different things that made you strong, what were they and how did they affect you?
Man.
I could tell I'm going to have to guide you through this one because you're like, I'm not going to do it for you, Eric. So let me just, like, for everybody listening, a lot of these things that you might talk about, you've never talked about in an open forum before.
No.
Only close people know to you.
Now.
Yeah, some people do know.
Now some people know. But growing up, no one knew.
No one knew growing up. So you were alone.
Besides some adults.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's not like you were afraid of sharing it because you're not afraid of anything. But it's just, it is hard. And two, for a long time, you were protecting people.
Yeah.
So take it away.
Where do I start? Where do I start? Okay, so I accepted Jesus at the age of 15, I think it was. And one of the things that I think God spoke to me that drew me close was that I don't remember exactly what was going on and what was being said, that when the time came for prayer, that I decided that I was going to say the prayer. But I kind of remember something along the lines of there being hope for change, not just for me, but for those around me. Immediately, I thought of my family. And that was enough to make me decide this is something I need to do. I mean, of course, I felt God and I felt the Holy Spirit in that instance. At the very same time, it just was like a light switch. It was like, oh, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for my whole life. Not just for me. The first thing that came to my mind was my family.
Yeah.
I have grown up to kind of be a social worker all my life without knowing.
Yeah.
I have learned through my parents in some ways, and just because of how life has been for me, I have always been very serving and giving, and I put others' needs first. And so even in my salvation, even in the moment of my salvation, I was like, oh, this is perfect for my family. And I was like, okay, this is it. This is the key. Now you got to dive in full on. Because if you want this to work, 15-year-old me, you got to be all in. And so that's what I did. And throughout, I can tell you that as I grew up in the faith, almost every single prayer I ever prayed was for my family. And I was adamant. I might as well had said, God, you got no choice but to save my whole family. Like, you have no choice because that's what you told me. And that's what your word says. So let's go. Every single one of them. And it did happen. It did. I saw my siblings come to Christ. Sarai wasn't born yet. But she kind of grew up in the church when she was born. I saw my mom and dad come to Christ. And I saw them all develop relationships. and it was beautiful. Of course, every person has their own story and their own journey with Christ. So the way that developed for them and that what that journey looks like is very different. Some are there with God and still working on it and doing their best, and others are completely fallen off. And some just have a complicated relationship. And still, I have hope to some degree because life has hit me hard. And I feel like I just need to just blurt it out, because I don't know that there is any other packaged way of saying what I need to say.
Yeah.
Or transitioning into it.
Why don't you just start with a story? Something early on that you remember.
Like
whatever it is that you're going to talk about, a story or instance of it happening.
I think that might be too heavy.
Okay. So then just blurt it out.
Yeah, I'll just blurt out what it is. So I did grow up in a home that, and there's just no way of saying it besides this way. I grew up in a home where I saw a lot of violence.
Are you trying to soften the blow of what you're saying?
I think so.
You are.
It's a little difficult. Because
in softening the blow, are you softening it for you or are you softening it for your family?
What in the therapeutic session is this? Maybe for the both of us. Yeah, I think for the both of us, because it's the first time that I am saying this out loud to the world.
Yeah.
And I can't take it back. And it makes it realer when you say something out loud like that. Although it's been very real. And then just thinking of others, the people involved. So, so I grew up in a home where I saw a lot of violence. I witnessed it. I experienced it. And as the firstborn, so my siblings and I are all like 6 years apart. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of became a third parent. And I was a support system for my parents, and then the support system for my siblings. And while I was an only child for 6 years of my life before my sister came, I had lived so much already that I knew that when my sister came, I said to myself something along the lines of, in whatever way a 6-year-old can say, I'm going to protect her as much as I possibly can from this craziness. And so I did my best. I did my best to protect her from hearing things, from seeing things. There's only so much I can do. So, we all were marked by it. We all did witness things. We all did experience it. No matter how much I tried to shield my siblings. I put myself out there to protect them, and I tried to protect my mom as much as I could. I even tried to protect my dad as much as I could. I tried everything. Like I physically kept them apart. I would have a lot of conversations with them, with my parents, about how I don't think this is working out with you guys. I think it's time. And I was probably like 7, having these conversations. And so fast forward to the moment of salvation, my parents are still married at that point. And I'm like, okay, well, there's hope in Jesus, so let's do this. And I prayed consistently and fervently for that. And there was change. I have to acknowledge that there was. have a journey with God for each person can be very complicated because you come with your own world. So I don't know what that's like for each of my family members right now, like exactly what it's like. I don't know. But yeah, that's the big reveal.
How do you feel right now? Oh man, this episode is looking like it's going to be a good one. And I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to interrupt you real quick for an offer that I think is going to bless your life. If you like exclusive access, if you like behind the scenes content, if you really, really, truly want to grow and you believe in the mission of Valley of the Heroic and what we're doing here, I want to invite you to join our private community on Patreon. Patreon is a really, really dope website that allows you to create exclusive content for your people. And you are my people. So listen, I'm inviting you to join. You'll get access to exclusive content. You'll get access to a private chat. You'll be able to talk to other people who think just like you and want to grow closer to God just like you. And on top of that, you allow us to continue to create this content completely for free on all the platforms that we release it on. I have so much more in the works that I'm preparing to do with Patreon, but I can't do it if nobody is in there. Right now, there's one member, and she's my mom. If you were a member before, I'm inviting you back. If you've never been a member, I want to invite you to pray. And I'm already talking too long, but I'm just really excited about what we're gonna do on Patreon, and I want you to be there. So tap the link in the show notes below to join on the Patreon. Anybody who tells me that they've joined because they heard this part will get a free t-shirt. You can show it to me on Instagram. You can say it in the comments down below. You can email me, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're gonna get a free t-shirt, a Valley of the Road t-shirt that I'm really excited to give to you guys. And we're gonna jump back into the episode because I already talked too much already. All right, love you guys. Peace, 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 peace.
Okay.
So for you, earlier you mentioned, in contrast to what you just said, that's the big reveal. Mm-hmm. Earlier you mentioned how growing up, no one knew. Mm-hmm. You had people like your best friend who was not just your best friend, but your families were friends. Mm-hmm. And if I'm correct, you guys always presented as and were known as the perfect family. And so, growing up for you, how difficult was that divide of being known as the perfect family, of having to, in a sense, as a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, act like you are the perfect family, act like everything is okay, and then going home and experiencing something different?
It was very confusing. But I think that this particular theme I'm about to talk about is actually pretty common in a lot of Spanish households and a lot of Latino families. It's las cosas de casa se quedan en casa.
Yeah.
Like, you don't air out your dirty laundry. Our business is our business and it stays within the family. And
anything
so,
negative gets swept under the rug.
Yeah.
In Spanish culture. Like, even when you hear about something that someone else did to another family member, oh, we don't talk about that.
Yeah. Their family, you have to protect them regardless of what may have happened, their family. And we are a family unit and we are a team and we keep going. So that was the theme in mine, which kind of made it easy to be like, okay, well, you know, like every family has its issues and this just happens to be one of them. But we do really love each other. And I mean, it was also like I feel like it needs to be understood that every person and every family is complex with a lot of layers. I've learned over time that not everyone is all good or all bad. I mean, some people are all bad. Mm-hmm. But people are people with histories. And it gets really complicated. And I feel like for me as a kid, I understood to a degree that my parents came from from some traumatic stuff and complicated pasts. And my little brain tried to take that, carry that, understand that, and show grace way before I was even a Christian.
Yeah.
And I feel like looking back, I can see God's hand all over it, and all over my life and my family's life even. And so there were a lot of expectations placed on me, so which led me to be this person that sought perfectionism. And the expectations were very hard on me. As many Latino households, I grew up in a very strict home. A lot was expected of me. Except in my home, it was beyond that. It was beyond your average.
Yeah, it was beyond. Yeah. Like the normal strictness and expectation in a Spanish household is already high, and yours was like probably double.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. So it made life a lot harder for me. And so what everyone so for me, having those expectations, it didn't translate to me like, oh, we have to play the perfect family. It was more like, this is expected of me. Like, we're supposed to try to be good. We're supposed to try to be polite. We're supposed to try to be on our, super well behaved. That's normal. But I didn't quite make sense out of, we're playing in this perfect family.
Yeah.
Probably not until much later. And I don't really know why I didn't reveal this stuff to my closest friends, especially my best friend, which we recently talked about. A few months ago. And she was like, what? And I said, oh, I didn't tell you any of this? And she's like, no. I was like, I wonder why. And as I thought about it, I think that maybe I didn't tell my friends because to some degree, I think I may have liked that there was this clear divide where
Wow.
I was able to be a kid. I was able to just enjoy myself and be a child, living childhood things with my friends. And so I didn't want to mesh the two.
Yeah.
And maybe a part of me was also fearful that they wouldn't want to be my friends. I mean, I wasn't consciously thinking all that, but I wonder if that was part of that. So I didn't reveal it to anyone. I did reach out to adults because there were adults that knew about the situation. And so I would talk to them sometimes like, hey, it's getting rough. And so, we would talk through that. And I think I only reached out to one person in my life one time when I felt like it was just too much. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that didn't go well. They did not participate in any way, shape, or form. And I think because that was the response that I got, I said, okay, well, there goes that. If this person, it was a family member too. So I was like, well, if this person out of all people isn't going to step in, why should I expect anyone else to? So I didn't try. Out of all that though, I have to say that that's when I started to grow this curiosity for understanding people and this desire to help other families not go through these kinds of tragedies. And so without knowing, in the 6th grade, I decided that I knew I wanted to become a mental health professional. At the time, it was a psychologist.
Yeah.
And later on that grew and it developed into I want to be the gap in families to help them through these kinds of conflicts, to grow healthy families out of tragedy.
Yeah.
And I'm not fully there yet, but I did get my master's in social work, like you mentioned, and I've worked with different populations. So yeah.
Thinking about the weight that you had to carry already right? As the oldest child, right? The oldest child, you always have to carry just a little bit more of the load, right? Because you're oldest. You also get the worst version of your parents because, assuming that they grow and they become less strict, right? You tend to get the quote unquote worst. Doesn't always mean that they're bad, but worst based on how they grow. I hope that makes sense because I'm not saying that everybody's worse. But you get that really unrefined version of parenting. And you're also navigating life by yourself, and then a sibling comes and now you have less attention. You don't have the benefit of having an older sibling that you can go to and say, hey, like every single other week that Chito comes to us and asks us like, what's your opinion of this? And we're like, we got you, ba ba ba. And he's like, oh, okay, Or every other year when Nathaniel comes to us and asks us for advice or whatever, or any of our siblings. And so it's already hard. But then on top of that, you were navigating everything that you were going through at home and also having to grow up faster because you always reference that decision you made that you were going to shield your siblings. And that wasn't just when you lived with your parents. You carried that.
Till this day.
Yeah. Very, very far. And, as being your husband, I've seen how many times that was the sword that scarred you because you were the shield. Mm-hmm. And bringing that forward to the redefinition of being a warrior. I'm curious to know about God's interactions with you pertaining to the pains that you went through within your home. And even some of the pains that you went through after salvation and how God redefined those.
So my interactions with God.
Pertaining to your pain.
Okay.
Concerning being a warrior.
Yeah.
And how hard you had it. Because like when we think about it, I remember when we first got together, we were just friends, and I knew that all these expectations were placed on. Like I said, the typical household had expectations. You were double. We almost had to wait until you got your doctorate to get married.
Yeah.
That was almost
The
a
case.
rule.
Yeah.
But you were about to like cut everybody. You were just like, this is not happening. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
but
I
like
don't think that
imagine.
I don't think that my dad expected that I would really actually go for my master's.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like imagine actually being serious with your kid and being like, yo, you can't get married till you have a doctorate. What? I can't get married till I am a doctor. Like I'm going to be a doctor before I'm a husband or wife. And so that's really high up there. Mm-hmm. And you shared how it translated into perfectionism for you. And these are crosses that you had to bear. Mm-hmm. The cross of perfectionism, the cross of being the oldest sibling, the cross of dealing with a violent home, the cross of everything that you went through. And then you come to this point where you grow into this person that's strong. You grow into this person that can shoulder a load. And then you hate the fact that you had to shoulder so many loads. Mm-hmm. And then God comes in and redefines that.
Yeah. Once we got married, I think the catalyst to my journey in redefining what these things were, and even coming to terms with the reality of what I had lived, was a few things. It was our marriage. It was that you had gotten severely depressed. And that once I was out of my house, things got worse.
Yeah.
It was those main things.
Because the shield wasn't there anymore.
Because I wasn't there anymore. And so those things propelled me. First, I was in a different environment where I no longer had to survive. I was in a safe environment and I was calling the shots. And so I came to terms with a lot of different things. And so conversations with God were like still very hopeful. I started to actually finally feel. I actually started to feel the pain of my life. I started to feel the things that I didn't feel for all those years because I was always in crisis. And so I didn't have the chance to feel sadness. I didn't have the chance to feel anger. I felt these things, but I didn't have the chance to actually give myself that moment to feel through it. I would feel it and be like, I don't have time for this. Dismiss it, quiet it, put it away, and keep moving because I had to. And that was the definition of strength, because my family needed me. Someone had to be the sane person. Someone had to be the put together person. Someone had to be the mediator. And I served as those things.
Yeah.
And I couldn't bear to see my siblings or my mother so broken. And I just sat there. To me, it was nuts to just sit there in my own feelings, even though I was the kid, right?
Yeah.
But I couldn't. I always felt like, well, if I can do something, why wouldn't I? And so I did. And I was the advocate. I was the mediator. I was the defender. And once I was out of that environment and I was in my own environment, I started to feel the weight of it all. I started to feel the pain. And then there were a lot of paradigm shifts, a lot of things that I think helped me to keep going started to crumble. So like I romanticized some things in my life that once I was out of the house and things got worse quickly, it all just came crashing down.
Yeah.
So I started to grieve. And I grieved for maybe a few years. And it took a lot of therapy too, to come to a healthy place and not to succumb to hatred and not to succumb to bitterness and but also learn to feel, because all these years I didn't learn how to feel. I only knew how to just do because things needed to be done.
Talk a little bit more about that, because I know why you didn't learn how to feel. You had to shut all of that down. You had to shut it all off to be able to survive. And then all of a sudden your therapist is like, I want you to feel. And that's like this revolutionary thing for you, because all this time you're just serving as that shield for your family and all the different roles that you had to go through. That must have been really, really difficult.
Oh, it was. It was, because I became a crybaby. We would have arguments between you and I, and it would be the smallest thing and waterworks.
Yeah.
And in the middle of it happening, I'm like, why am I crying? This is nuts. Why am I crying? Oh my gosh, please stop crying. Please stop crying. Don't be a punk. I mean, I wasn't a punk, but it was so much. It was like I opened this door and out came all these feelings that were put away for so long and just rushed out. And I had to learn. I remember telling my therapist, I'm like, when I start to let myself feel, I can't stop. And I feel like I'm getting worse. I don't like it. Is there a way to like do this slowly? This is too much.
Like feel small.
Right. Just feel a little bit and then
small.
just, all right, that's enough. I'm good for today. That was enough feelings for today. But what's funny is that when I became a Christian, it was through God how I first started to feel things. It was through him first, and then through therapy later on in life. When I first met God, I remember feeling all these beautiful feelings and even grieving some things, and that having someone to go to, I had it now. Someone that was dependable and reliable and that could do something about it. I had it now. So through God, I started to dabble in being okay with feeling things, and crying was okay. And I had the space for it now in prayer time. I had that. So that was really, really nice. And that's how my interactions were. That was my space to feel as best as I could. And that was my space to vent. And that was my space to have someone to go to, which just further strengthened my faith in the face of the impossible. And so sorry, I veered off. You were saying something else.
I said about the turning off the emotions, how difficult that was for you.
Okay. So then fast forward to therapy. I started therapy in 2017 also, and there was a lot going on between us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just feelings here, is feelings there. But what led me to therapy is that there was just so much pent up internally for me that I started feeling the physical effects of it that I couldn't control. And that was scary to me. And I was like, oh no. So I found a therapist, and I was so lucky to find I looked for one, and she was it. And she has been my ride or die for a long time. And I still see her. And she walked me through some new things like journaling. She walked me through learning to feel things as heavy as they were, and just letting them come in and out. And she is Christian, so it was helpful to have her speak truth to me too. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was hard to learn, because that meant that I had to rewire my brain, and how I reacted to things, or notice how my body was so tense and it didn't need to be, and having to change these reactions and relearn all these things was a lot. And having to accept that the feelings I'm feeling are okay to have, and I should have them, was like a new concept.
You could continue where you were going from before I interjected. Do you remember?
No.
You were answering the original question from before about your interactions with God in regards to the different pains that you went through.
Oh, okay. So, I didn't, like I said, I didn't grow up as a Christian, but I remember begging God many times as a child. And when I had the opportunity to accept Christ, I did. I didn't get mad at God about anything. I didn't say like, oh, why didn't you protect me? I don't know why, but I guess God just had my heart softened and ready. And I'm grateful for that, because it's been life-changing. And then later on, I think I accepted that what the Bible talks about, that we would go through suffering. And I know that that's not my full portion. And I think that because there was the hope that that wasn't my full portion, I was like, oh, okay, so now we're just on the next chapter of suffering. Okay, cool. What do you want me to do, God? That was my attitude. It was like, okay, something else is going to happen. This is an opportunity. And so James always played in my head when something new popped up. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a new opportunity for you to glorify yourself. What do you want me to do? I'm here. And so I just reported for duty every time. That was just my attitude. Again, it was probably a testament to how God made me, and a testament to how I grew up. I was a doer. And except this time, God redefined it. This time, God was like, you're safe here. You do have a choice. And like, you can choose to do, you can choose to feel, you can choose to do all those things. Like, we're doing this together. It's at our pace. It's not like a me versus you thing. So I think that the learned skills as a kid that I had to adjust quickly and react appropriately in the face of crisis. While it's unfortunate that I had to learn those skills, I had the skills.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm doing it with purpose, I'm like, okay, God, here's another thing happening in my life. It sucks. It hurts. What do I do? And so I'd interact with God that way. And then I just did. I just did as God instructed. And I just waited. And sometimes it was very frustrating. And I think as life happened in my adulthood, I started to, I don't know, I feel like I started to go into a different phase of my life in my Christian walk, because then I did start to feel some despair. I did start to feel the weight of the pain, because I wasn't putting off the pain and those feelings for later. And so, but I was also trying to learn not to hide away the feelings. So I started to remember a lot of preachings and not growing up, but as a teenager that I would hear. And I'm like, okay, well, in every preaching I hear that God loves me, God protects me, God accepts me as I am. That there's nothing that I can do that would separate me from him, that no sin is too big. Then that means I can be real, right? That means I can be honest, right? I've heard in preachings that he's my father, and a daughter or a son to a parent, that means I can be myself, right? And so I started approaching God very differently in my prayers once we got married, and everything just started to, it's like everything became, it's like all the issues of life before marriage and then after just became one big ball and was just like, here you go, boom. And I was like, whoa. And I remember being called by my parents for crisis like weekly.
Yeah.
I had to go to my parents' house a lot to diffuse situations, to be a parent again. Like it was a lot. And I was in this vicious cycle of playing savior. But anyway, I came to the point in my relationship with God where I would come in front of God and I was like, okay, I really don't want to be disrespectful, God. I really don't want to be rude, because you're God. So please don't take it as this. But I'm going to be honest. What is happening? What is going on? I'm not okay. This is nuts. I can't take this anymore. And so all the feelings that I would have, I started to dump them in front of God, which is very biblical. It's casting my burdens onto God.
Yeah.
It just didn't look pretty. Mm-hmm. It didn't look holy.
Yeah.
It didn't look like, I didn't have these eloquent words, this Christianese that I applied when I was telling God, well, God, I am feeling XYZ, Lord, would you help me? It wasn't like that. It was, God, I'm so tired. I don't understand what's happening and I can't take this anymore. What are you doing? Followed by, I'm sorry, God, I'm not trying to be defiant, but I really don't understand. What am I supposed to do now? I just want to do what you want me to do. Can we please move on? It was very, very raw.
Yeah.
But I was so grateful because I was able to have those interactions with him and have him respond and have a safe space to be honest about my grief, be honest about what was happening, be honest with what was going through my mind and my heart. I had a safe place now.
Imagine, or it's impactful to me how different that is, to find a place of safety in God that you didn't have before, and how that place of safety provided the space for you to just be yourself, which is exactly what was robbed from you as a child.
Yep. So I also wrestled a lot with the idea that my childhood wasn't all bad and it wasn't all good. And I had to come to an agreement with myself like, hey, it wasn't the best childhood. You didn't have to go through some of the things that you went through. That was not okay. And you also had some good moments. And thank God. Thank God that there were good moments to point to. Because at least I can collect. Confused. Right. I mean, at first it was confusing. It was confusing because I'm like, do I hate this person now? I don't know what to do. How do I categorize what's happened?
Yeah.
What do I do with all this? Do I just keep going back to my house like nothing's wrong?
But it points to what you said in the beginning, how complex people are.
Yeah.
How complex and how everyone is on a journey.
Yeah.
And sometimes everybody thinks of a journey as linear.
Yeah,
even the people who think of it as non-linear, they always think of it as progressive. Yeah. So it's always forward.
Yeah.
But
it's not. No.
Sometimes you leave stage 0, you make it all the way to 99 at 100, right before 100, and you go back to 0. Mm-hmm. Because something happened.
Yeah.
You know, and we're really complex as human beings. And, you know, they have that big saying that goes that if you lived a year in someone's shoes, you'd understand all the decisions that they made. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think there's truth to that. We all respond to situations differently. But there's reasons why. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on inside of our hearts and in our minds. And I think that it's insane to me that as a below 10-year-old child, you were able to hold grace and space for adults.
Yeah. Yeah. And it shouldn't have been that way.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't have been. And it would have been much nicer if it would have just been safe from the beginning.
Yeah.
But the silver lining in it all is that we have a pretty darn safe place for our girls.
Yep. And we call the shots.
And we call the shots.
I'll never forget, maybe a year or 2 back, I was talking to Johanna because I had this disturbing dream, and I never really remember my dreams. But usually if I can remember, it's because God is saying something. Mm-hmm. And so I called Johanna because he's always having a dream and it's always God. Or almost always God. And so I called him because he has so much experience with it that I just needed to, I needed to pick it apart with someone. And it involved my dad. And I remember that going through the dream and then having a conversation about it. And he said something that never left me. He said something like, think about how some of these things, while they're not okay that they happened, they led you to be who you are now. And it's a good thing. And that's not exactly, those weren't his exact words, but that's what I took from it. And that was really, really hard for me to like make sense of. I knew what he meant, but it was hard to apply.
Yeah.
Because I was still also going through my process of what I was going to do with my dad. Like what role was he going to take now in my life? Or even in my head.
Yeah.
And in my heart. And I remember him saying that, and I'm still going through my journey, and I'm feeling like, but I don't really want to attribute any of the goodness to him. I don't. Because it was me. I had to do that. I had to grow up, and I had to choose not to be angry and bitter. I had to choose that when I have my family, it's going to be different. I had to choose this and that. I had to choose to protect. And then that was my initial reaction. And before anyone comes for me, then it was, I had to do that, and I was able to do that because God had me the whole time without me knowing. So I don't want to attribute it to him. I'm attributing that to me and to God's grace all over me. That was my reaction. But I still wrestled with it. I still wrestled with that idea because I knew that it was really good advice. And it was coming from someone who has his own story and he can relate to. I'm not saying that he had my life, my story. Please don't take that. But he shared some things that there were similarities in our lives, and some of his dynamics in his family that I was like, okay, I can see what you're saying. I get it. But I wrestled with it. And I tried to like outline like, okay, well, I'm like this because of this, or like I got that from him, or I got that from her. And I remember growing up, I used to say, okay, I'm going to watch my parents very carefully so I know exactly what not to do. That sucks.
Yeah.
I remember saying, okay, this is what I won't do in my marriage. There was a point that I said, I'm never getting married. Tricks on me. Thank God, because God came. But yeah, I watched carefully so that I wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. And so with that idea of there were good things that came out of it was difficult, but I can attribute that stuff now, and I'm grateful for it. Because the thing is that I took some of those things, some of those qualities, and then I chose how to use them.
Yeah.
I'm a very strategic and I'm analytical person, but I don't use it to manipulate anyone.
Yeah.
For example.
I thought you were going to give more examples.
No, I don't want to get that deep.
Yeah. No, but that's a great example because it points to the fact that sometimes you can use the skills that you have, whether they're ones you gained from other family members or just things that you have, you can use them for your own gain or you can use them for good.
Yeah.
And you made a conscious decision to use them for good, to use it for your family, to use it for the people that you love, to use it for society as a social worker as well. And so I feel like this was a great first step because you haven't shared anything before.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to push you.
I'm okay. I'm good.
Yeah, but I'm good too. Like
okay.
I think this was great. And I just really want to applaud you both as your wife, your husband, as my wife, and as your best friend. Like you did a pretty good job, both today and in life.
Thank you.
You don't look like what you went through. You know, I know the nitty gritty details, you know, and you're such a heartfelt and amazing person. And you could have been such a cynical and angry person. And you handle life with such grace. Do you get angry sometimes? Yeah.
Of course.
You know, but you handle life with so much grace. And I hope that more and more people can get to know the amazing person that is you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you are still here, we are so grateful for you. We hope that you would consider subscribing and sharing this episode with somebody if you feel that it would bless them. And with that being said, we hope that you guys have an amazing week. See you in the next one. Peace.
Okay.
I love you.
Love you too.